everyone. This is A Lil Spooky, podcast about things that spook us a little bit, like aliens, cryptids, conspiracies, or when your cats interrupt your podcast with a jarring jump scare. My name is Everett.
And I'm Colleen.
I apologize.
And that cat's name was Charizard.
And Mudkip. We have two cats.
Yes, and they suck.
I listened to the last episode. I wanted to keep that in, but it was definitely obviously unexpected. And it did scare me. I knew it was coming and it still scared me. So I apologize.
I legitimately was not exaggerating when I said I almost peed my pants.
Yeah.
Luckily, I've got great bladder control.
I don't even know what they did still. They must have knocked over something. And it's not like we're hoarders or anything, but I still can't figure out like
I have no
what
idea.
the hell they did.
I don't know. But fuck you, Charizard.
And Mudkip.
It was definitely Charizard. He's a large cat.
We don't have enough badges to control him.
That's so true.
Well, what are we talking about today, Colleen?
Well, I was just spending my time thinking back about the good old days, the before times. Do you remember what you were doing in the before times?
Pretty much the same thing I'm doing now.
Really? What are you doing now? The answer is nothing, because the world ended in 2012.
Yeah, okay, I was going to say I'm basically doing nothing. So
the world ended in 2012. I don't know if the audience knew that, but I'm about to explain why and how.
Okay. So before you even get into this, I do want to say we did briefly mention this in a previous episode.
Yes, and it's been eating at my brain ever since.
So, and I'm trying to remember the context of why we were talking about this. Do you remember what episode it was?
Was it the Georgia Guidestones, maybe?
Possibly.
I don't remember.
But, and I mean, when this kind of went viral, this whole story.
2019.
Yeah, when this all went viral, I remember reading it then. So this was a couple years ago now. I remember the gist, but I obviously know you're going to talk in detail about this. But we all died in 2012, right?
We didn't die. But the world did end. We'll get there.
Okay.
Just before I start, what do you remember of life before the year 2012? Or, before December 21st, 2012?
I remember that was an election year.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I remember there was an election. What else happened around then? People were freaking out that the world was going to end. I remember that.
Right.
Like every, clickbait news article was about how are we going to die tomorrow?
Okay, but like for you, does the world feel like it changed?
I mean...
And let's not talk about the Rona. None of that stuff.
Yeah.
We're all sick of hearing about that.
Right.
Between your childhood and now, other than like nostalgia about the good old days, does the world feel different to you?
The one thing that really does come to mind is it feels like time moves much more quickly now. I don't know if that's just a natural thing because I'm getting older, or is it because of this?
I think that's a natural thing because you're getting older. And I actually read an article about that a long time ago, and I have no sources and don't remember it in any way, except for the one sentence in there that said, by the time you turn 7, you have essentially lived half of your life, right? In terms of perception of time.
Time moves so much more slowly when you're little because, like, if you're 5 years old, half of your life is 2.5 years ago. But
right.
Half of my life ago now was 15 years ago. So.
Right. So, but to you, like, life has moved on. Now, it doesn't, you feel like you're living in the same world you lived in 2012.
I mean... Personally, I mean, obviously with like life changes, like moving cities and states and all that aside, I will say the one thing that does seem different between before 2012 and now, it does definitely seem like there's more disaster news all the time. Like there's a lot more like negative news.
It feels like it.
It does feel like it. Yeah.
Well, a lot of people think that is a legitimate point.
Right.
That's something that has actually changed between 2012 and now. And that is because the world ended in 2012 and we're actually in an alternate universe, or our consciousness has been uploaded to a contraption of some kind, or we're in hell.
Right.
In 2019, a man named Nick Hinton posted a thread on Twitter outlining how he thinks the world might have ended, and this became a large phenomenon. I did do a lot of my own research for this, but I want to attribute the whole idea and like the flow of this to the originator of all of these theories, and that is Nick Hinton.
Okay.
If you Google him, I mean, you can just Google "Did the World End in 2012?" Nick Hinton, and you can read the whole thread.
Yeah.
He doesn't go super in depth into everything, but it's interesting enough that it leads you down a bunch of rabbit holes.
And I remember him leaving a lot of links, if I'm correct, about like the specific topics he talks about. Yeah. So if you want to do further research about like a specific thing, then you get some background.
Or you can listen to me tell you what happened and why we don't exist anymore.
Got it.
Okay, so he doesn't talk about this, but I gotta get the first thing everybody thinks about when they think about the end of the world in 2012 is the Mayan calendar.
Right.
He doesn't talk about that because it's like, actually a load of crap.
And I mean, it's literally a calendar.
It is.
They just stopped at 2012.
Sort of, yes. So the ancient Maya, and yes, I know I pronounce ancient wrong. I refuse to change. It's ancient. The ancient Maya were an incredibly advanced people. The peak of their civilization was around 600 CE.
Yeah.
And their culture, in terms of science, like far surpassed what I imagine when I think of ancient culture. You know, you kind of think of primitive people, but no, this was not the case.
Well, and I imagine especially with like the ability to build certain types of buildings, that's where they excelled. Especially if I remember correctly.
Right. They had monuments, elaborate cities. They had like a city on the water. And they had a super sophisticated calendar system that happens to end on December 21st, 2012. Here's the thing. It's really complex, and it's called the calendar round. Each cycle of this calendar lasts 52 years. And at the end of that 52 years, it just resets itself like a clock.
Right.
So the problem with that is because it's a cyclical calendar and not linear time like we think of it.
Yeah.
They can't record past and future events in the same way we can.
Yeah, it's like if it resets after 52 years.
Right, if it's beyond 52 years, it's going to be difficult to keep track in a linear way of what may have happened in previous cycles.
Sure, at least with that specific calendar, but I'm sure they were like first cycle, second cycle, third cycle.
Well, they actually fixed it in a different way. So they have that calendar round, but around the year 300 BC, they created another calendar to get around this called the long count. And it's still a cyclical calendar. That must just be how they imagine time.
Sure.
But instead of 52 years, this calendar is 5,126 years. I'm not sure where the calculations came from that time to the other time.
Very different from how we measure time.
Basically, they just got around it by making the calendar round way, 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 way longer.
Sure. So
essentially, anybody like 5,000 years in the future is going to be the one who's going to have to worry about how to record future events.
Right.
The starting point of this long count calendar was August 11th, 3114 BCE. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I wonder why they chose that.
I didn't look into it. I'm sure there's some.
I know. I'm just wondering. Like, I wonder if it had something to do with like astrology or something.
I'm sure it did. But the cycle was slated, obviously, 5,126 and some years to end December 21st, 2012.
Right.
This, however, was not meant to be a predictor of the end of days. It was just a reset of the clock.
Right.
There's a 1,300-year-old stone tablet in Mexico, and that's where the origination of this end of the world comes from. It's a very badly deteriorated stone tablet that potentially has a prediction that the god of creation will come at the end of this cycle and destroy everything. And there will be a cataclysmic apocalypse.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Well, the thing is that's highly disputed because it's an incredibly badly damaged and easily misread tablet. Okay. So there's the majority of Mayan scholars say that reading of it is just garbage and that it's all it means is it's the end of one cycle and the beginning of another.
Right.
So, sorry everybody if you thought the Mayans knew what they were doing, but they just
Well, they knew what they were doing. It's
they did.
Just the people that interpreted it didn't know what they were thinking.
Right. But they did happen to correctly predict the year the world ended. Because the world ended in 2012.
Right. Yes. I forgot.
Right. Keep that in mind. We're not here. The world is gone. Wake up, sheeple.
Yeah.
Okay. So the real reason the world might have ended. The Higgs boson particle. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah.
Higgs boson particle, also called the God particle.
I know a little bit about this.
By Stephen Hawking. Okay, so this is like a complicated sciencey bit, and Everett is way more of a sciencey mixed science face than I am.
Well, specifically with this, I'm going to guess since you did research on it, you're going to know more about it. But what I remember is Stephen Hawking saying like 2 years later after it was discovered, in like 2014 or 2015 maybe, he said something like, if improperly handled or something, this particle could cause a black hole. So
something like that.
Yeah. So the idea was like we could get sucked into a black hole, or it could like create a rift in space time or something like that.
Right. Let me break her down for you.
Yeah.
The Higgs boson particle is the manifestation of an energy field. There's an energy field that permeates the entire universe, and it's called the Higgs field.
Yeah.
This field, for reasons I don't understand, because my brain is not wired that way, this field is thought to be the reason why particles have mass. Essentially, it's the reason we exist.
Okay.
Field itself, the Higgs field, was largely thought to be a theory, like, you know, just a way for scientists to explain why things have been happening the way that they have until 2012. In Geneva, the scientists at CERN used the Large Hadron Collider and actually discovered what they think is the Higgs boson particle, which essentially proves, quote unquote, the existence of the Higgs field.
Yeah.
The Higgs field penetrates the entire universe, which means that it affects the vacuum of empty space-time in the universe.
Right.
So there's Earth, there's stars, there's mass, there's things, and in between all of that,
dark matter,
empty space-time. Now that they've discovered the Higgs boson particle, they found that the total mass of this particle is 126 times the mass of a proton.
Okay.
The mass of the Higgs boson particle is related somehow to how stable the vacuum of space and time is. So if it was a little bit smaller, like a percentage point smaller or a percentage point larger, that would mean that the universe is completely stable. But for some reason, 126 times is the exact percentage difference in mass. That means it deems the entire universe unstable. It has the potential to collapse in on itself.
Right.
So this entire field created of Higgs boson particles that permeates the entire universe is essentially on the verge of collapsing in on itself. You know, as I was saying, if the mass of the particle were just a few percentage points different either way, it means that the universe would last forever, like completely stable.
Right.
But that ain't it. And science is fairly certain at some point, high energy levels are going to cause the Higgs boson particle or the Higgs field in general to become completely unstable. When one of those particles becomes unstable, it creates a black hole, a vacuum.
Yep.
And because that's connected to all of the other particles in the field, it's going to create a catastrophic vacuum decay that's going to collapse the entirety of space-time as we know it.
Right.
So
it's not just a black hole that would happen. It would be the entire universe sucks in on itself, basically.
Yes. Yeah. So, you know, like you've heard of the Big Bang, and that's how the universe started.
It'd be the exact opposite.
This is like the big crunch, they referred to it as. Like it all kind of just collapses in on itself. The thing is, the universe is so huge, this could happen at any point, and it would take a while.
I don't know if it would take a while.
Well, I'm about to get to that. So why hasn't this happened yet? Why hasn't energy collapsed the universe? First, we don't know that it hasn't. Second, Higgs field emerged at the birth of the universe, and it slowly changes to find an optimal balance of strength and energy. So currently, the Higgs field, they've determined, is in what is called a minimum potential energy state, which means if you picture like a bunch of hills and valleys, we're currently in a valley.
Okay.
But it's working to move up towards the top of a hill.
Right.
And in order to do that, a huge amount of energy is required. Like it has to chug its way up the top of this hill and slowly gaining more and more and more energy until it gets to the top when it has potential energy and then it falls down to the bottom of the next hill.
Right.
Does that make any sense?
Yes.
Okay. Any random fluctuation in this intense chug-a-lug process all the way up to the top
screws the cycle.
Yep, triggers a process called quantum tunneling. And instead of climbing to the top of the next hill, it would tunnel through the hill directly into the next valley, which has lower energy than the valley it's currently in. Mm-hmm. And as you know, I am thinking of pressure, but like that would create a vacuum, essentially. Yeah. This would occur somewhere in the empty space between galaxies, and it would create a giant vacuum bubble that would shrink atoms, disintegrate atomic nuclei, and leave hydrogen as the only element left in the universe. I couldn't figure out why that was, but that's interesting.
Well, the reason that would be that, like, why is because hydrogen is the smallest, like, nuclear or whatever. It's like nucleic number. Oh. So like, it has one proton, one atom, or one proton, one electron. So if everything, like all the molecules are like ripped from each other, everything will eventually become hydrogen. Like everything breaks down.
Oh, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
You're right. Well, this vacuum bubble would expand at the speed of light and be completely unstoppable. So it's not an instantaneous process. It has to happen atom by atom by atom at the speed of light, slowly eating the universe.
At the speed of light.
At the speed of light, yes. But imagine how giant the universe is.
That's true.
Obviously, these are predictions based on the discovery of this particle. So any new information that's found, new particles, new information about how this particle acts could completely change that entire theory. And this could all be rendered useless. But as of right now, scientists predict that it's only a matter of time until this giant vacuum bubble consumes us all.
Sure, but I mean, a matter of time could be billions of years from now.
Yes.
Yep. Or it could have been
9
years ago.
Right, exactly. Stephen Hawking himself warned that the danger of this particle is too great to be ignored. But it's not going to happen for at least 10 to the 58th power number of years. Okay. So billions of years.
Yeah.
And by then, we'll most likely be extinct, and none of this will matter anyway.
We for sure will, unless we leave Earth.
Right.
Yeah.
However, as Everett just said, this may have already happened. And since the space is infinitely large, that bubble just hasn't reached us yet. And if it does happen, we would have no way of knowing, because it would essentially for us be instantaneous, speed of light.
So my question, though, is if we were screwing around with the God particle here on Earth, would this potentially set off a reaction starting in our point in the universe, or could it have triggered something elsewhere? So like if this already did happen, wouldn't we have all died a quick and hopefully painless death?
Yes. So it's possible that the discovery of to answer your question, yes, it could happen here. It can happen at any point in the universe.
Right, but I'm saying when they discovered it in 2012, if it set off a chain reaction that was screwing with the Higgs field or whatever it was, wouldn't that have changed things starting here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's possible that the discovery of the Higgs boson particle, by discovering it, the scientists at CERN accidentally triggered the event by providing the incorrect amount of energy, destabilizing the atom, and actually creating the vacuum bubble where they were, instantaneously sucking us into a vacuum.
Right.
That sounds, honestly, even to me, a conspiracy theorist, ridiculous. Wouldn't you have noticed? We wouldn't be here.
No one knows what's inside a black hole, though.
Exactly. There are actual physicists who think that this possibly could have happened. So, without getting even into more science and boring your pants off, even though, honestly, this is super interesting to me, there's reason for some physicists to believe that a multiverse exists. When I picture this, as I was reading it, I was thinking, the Men in Black, where they've got the galaxy.
Yeah, the very end of the movie. You mean?
Yes, well, there's a whole galaxy in the cat's collar chain thing.
Something like that.
And it looks like a marble. And then at the very end, you zoom out and you realize that that galaxy is within our galaxy, which is in its own marble, which is being played with by a bunch of weird, like, giant space octopi.
Yeah. And I think this idea,
octopuses.
if you've seen Ant-Man, I think that idea is potentially referenced to when he goes super particle small. Like, the idea is, like, alluded to that the deeper you go, like the more microscopic you go, it kind of works like a circle where you're just kind of entering a new galaxy or the same galaxy. Like if you keep going smaller, then you get bigger, smaller, bigger, smaller, bigger. But yeah.
Exactly. So basically the theory is there's a bunch of universes that are existing simultaneously. Ours is not the only universe that exists. And a black hole is a vacuum that sucks everything in, including light. And some physicists theorize that due to the enormous amounts of pressure and speed required to create a black hole, the hole itself could actually potentially be a one-way door between universes. So if you think of like essentially a tunnel through time between this universe and the next one.
Maybe. If
you threw yourself into the black hole, the shredded up particles that you used to be, because you would essentially be completely, atomized.
Pretty much. I mean, like, I've watched a few videos on it, so it's like, it's one tiny point in the center of a black hole that's pulling you in.
Yes. And seed, it's called the seed.
Right. And since you're not like a perfectly symmetrical being, different portions of your body, and it depends on where, like how you're facing the black hole too. Once you get into the area where it's going to start sucking you in, the parts of your body that are closest to the hole are going to be dragged in first before the rest of the parts of your body. So it will rip you apart like bit by bit.
Well, right. And the immense amounts of pressure essentially means, you're basically just a bunch of shredded atoms at that point. So you exist. The matter that created you still exists, but it is completely separated such that you are not you. If that makes sense. Anyways, the thought is we were sucked into one of those one-way doors and thrown into a different universe. So, what do you think about that?
I don't say it's impossible, but I feel like how a black hole is created, like, or at least the theories of how a black hole is created, it's like a dying star that like supernovas, and then like once a dead star reaches a certain mass, it gets more and more dense and dense and dense, and then it just gets to an infinitely small point, which then creates a black hole. I don't know if that would create a door to another universe.
Well, there's an immense amount of speed happening within a black hole as well. So the thought is...
the speed of things being dragged into it. The black hole itself, I don't think it's moving.
No, it's moving.
Where's it going?
The point is, that's what I learned through my meandering through the internet.
I mean, well, it's all theory. Like, black holes are theory. I mean, black holes do exist, especially after discoveries from the last few years, too.
Right.
But it's still very theoretical.
Right. And I skipped a bunch of science stuff about infinitesimally small points called seeds, and then there's torsion and speed that affect the direction of a black hole, essentially creating the tunnel.
Right.
If I understood it, I would be talking about it. But it was so complicated and just so theoretical to me that I could not picture it. So I'm boiling it down to
layman's terms.
Black hole is a one-way door between universes. Potentially. And this isn't like some weird conspiracy theorist that made that up. Physicists have actually hypothesized that this could be a thing that happens.
Right.
So the thought is we were sucked into one of those one-way doors. Now we're in a different universe. But the thing is, how would we know? Because I don't remember being sucked into a vacuum, heated to 1 billion degrees, and like pooped into a new universe.
Right.
Do you remember?
No, I guess the idea would be with the Higgs boson particle and like all of the chain reaction that may have set off. This would have happened so quickly and near simultaneously that almost everything would theoretically be the same.
Right.
So it's not like you're being sucked into a black hole. It's just we are suddenly
rearranged.
Yeah.
Yep. So nobody actually knows what a new universe would look like. I mean, a multiverse could mean anything. You could be put into a universe full of upside down giant wieners. I don't know.
Right. If you subscribe to the idea of infinite possible universes too, but that's not necessarily the case with multiverse theory.
Right.
I mean, there could be two universes, and black holes are just like doors.
It's just one door between the two. Yes, exactly. The thought is that the universe we were sent to is exactly like our own, but with slight differences. There are a lot of people on this strange interwebs of ours that say that the world has felt different since 2012.
Sure.
And I'm sure a lot of people say that, like, oh, the good old days back in the day when we could do this. But these are people who say things
like feel different.
There are things they remember that never happened. And I mean, you got to admit that these past couple of years have been a fucking whirlwind. I mean, we got Trump as the president, fascism, anti-fascism, political unrest, school shootings. Think of how intense those have gotten. Wars, a pandemic. We're all basically stuck in our... The world isn't even the same as it was last January.
Yeah. I have thoughts. I'll save my thoughts for that point later. I don't want to spoil the fun here for a sec.
Oh, great. Well, now it makes me feel like you're just
No. I remember reading this whole thread 2 years ago or whatever. I'm like, I don't necessarily agree with this portion of the argument.
Well, okay. Some people, and it feels like this is correct. I don't agree with it, but it might as well be. Some people think that we were sucked into the black hole and sent to hell.
Okay.
Because just it feels like everything is taking a turn for the worse.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, no, it hasn't. Can you imagine what it would be like living during the Black Plague when a third of the population died?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. We live in a time where like there's less war than there ever has been.
Yes.
It's just with social media, we can all get very hyper focused on certain, events that may be happening around the world. It's just...
And side note, if I hear the phrase, these unprecedented times, one more time, I...
Gonna kick something.
Yes, I was going to say something a lot more drastic, but in reality, I will probably just kick something.
Yeah.
These aren't unprecedented times. If you were alive during the influenza of 1918, you would know there's a precedent. A third of the world died during the Black Plague.
Like a third of Europe did. But that's still a ton of people.
It's very Eurocentric
yes.
of me. The point is, there's precedent, people. So get over yourselves. Anyways, but I'm gonna back off of that argument.
Okay.
So it's possible we got sent to hell. Sometimes it feels like it.
Sure.
But it's also possible that when the universe was destroyed, our collective consciousness just got sucked through a tunnel and moved into a universe that's exactly like ours, but not quite.
Sure.
Have you ever heard of the Mandela effect?
Yeah.
Do you know what it is?
Yeah, I think it was named that because a lot of people thought Nelson Mandela died in prison in South Africa when he actually just very recently died.
Yeah, he actually lived a long and happy life.
It was like 91 or something crazy like that.
Right, he died in 2013.
Yeah. So the idea is like some people have different memories of certain things happening. So I know one of the common ones referred to as Berenstein versus Berenstein bears.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So, yeah, basically people are remembering things that never happened. And it's not just like
group memory.
Yes, it's not just one person saying like, oh, I thought Berenstein was spelled with an E and not an A. Or the other way around. It's a collective group of people who remember things the exact same way, and that thing never happened.
Right.
I mean, the smallest examples of this are super dumb. Like, a lot of people think that J.C. Penney was spelled Penny and not Penney. Like that sort of dumb. Like to me, that's not even a good example of the Mandela effect.
No, I don't think so either. I mean, you always see those types of things on clickbait stuff about this, but I think it is still something worth looking at because, especially with 24-hour news and how it's existed for the past few decades. I mean, they can change the narrative, so things may be brought to the masses to make us misremember things versus people that were there remember it differently.
Right.
So,
well, how about this one? A lot, and I mean a lot, of people think that the Statue of Liberty is on Ellis Island when it's not. It is on Liberty Island. It always has been. It has never been on Ellis Island. There are people on Facebook who have pictures of themselves geolocated to Ellis Island, standing in front of nothing. But it says, I'm here at the Statue of Liberty.
Wait. So they have picture. Wait, so is the picture of them with the Statue of Liberty, but it's just geo-tagged at the wrong island? Or
they are posing in front of and staring at literally nothing, but they are tagged as being on Ellis Island at the Statue of Liberty.
So is that like a joke? I don't get it.
No, the thought is, well, I mean, it could be. I don't. This is the internet.
I mean, obviously, if a statue is behind you.
Well, the thought is that these pictures were from the before time, when we were in our past universe, and the Statue of Liberty was on Ellis Island.
Oh, I see.
And those pictures were taken, but there's some sort of glitch that
I see.
Residual imagery. It's far-fetched. I'll give
you that.
No,
I mean, that is a little more interesting than just like, J.C. Penney's with an E versus a Y.
That's just a very simple example in terms of explaining it. But a lot of people think that the Mandela effect isn't just some strange brain phenomenon.
Yeah, they think it's more of like something related to...
It's like residual knowledge left over from our...
like a parallel universe.
Travel to this universe. Right. Here's another one about the Statue of Liberty. For some reason, there's quite a few about the Statue of Liberty. You can't go to the torch of the Statue of Liberty. It's been closed for over 100 years. Nobody has been up there. However...
Wait, is that true?
Yes.
Okay.
You can. Yeah, it's been closed for a long time, over 100 years. Nobody's been up there, and I can't remember why exactly that was. Something to do about World War I. There was like a plot of some kind, but it's been closed. You can't travel up to the torch. You can't because there's an area in the torch that's meant for like visiting and sightseeing, but it's been closed again, 100 years. However, there are a lot of people right now, a lot, who say they have been there, and they even have pictures of themselves inside the torch.
Here's my devil's advocate for this specific point. I believe I think it was the first Ghostbusters, they are in the torch of the Statue of Liberty, or maybe they're in the crown. Maybe I'm wrong.
They're likely in the crown.
Maybe I'm wrong then. I was going to say maybe people are just thinking of things like that from pop culture where they see things in the torch and they're like, oh yeah. And then it creates false memories in their head.
Well, they have photographic proof.
Oh.
Yes, they have pictures of themselves in the torch.
So how do we know if they're real or fake? Like, has anyone ever tried analyzing them to see if they're shopped or anything?
I'm sure people have.
I know what the point is. I'm just thinking like...
Yes, no, there's got to be a way to prove that. Yeah. It's just, there are many people who think back to their high school trips to New York City and how they visited the torch.
Sure.
And they were there. Like, have you ever had a memory that happened and then you talk to your mom about it and she's like, that never happened?
Yeah. And that's what I'm kind of saying.
But you are convinced. Like, it happened. You have the specific memory in your head that happened. And your mom's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
That's what I mean, though. I feel like as we grow older, like, it's easier to misremember things.
Right. And that's, first off, you're crushing this.
No,
this conspiracy theory. But second, I mean, that's the most likely explanation.
Well, yeah. And I guess that's why I like hate the whole idea of the Mandela effect, because I feel like there is merit to it. It's just the examples that are always given are a little far-fetched.
Right. Well, you can go online and look for these pictures of the Statue of Liberty at Ellis Island or people in the torch. The point is, it's supposed to point towards, is this a glitch in the Matrix?
Right.
We have to bring that up every episode.
Well, this is actually applicable, though.
Yes, it is. But could that be a sign that our collective consciousness was uploaded to a certain piece of technology and there are certain glitches in which we remember a previous universe?
Right.
Have we been sucked into a black hole and sent to a parallel universe and there's some sort of residual atomic structure that just, preserved?
Somehow memories weren't changed when they were supposed to be. Yeah.
Right. So there are people, and this one is very far-fetched. There are people who have claimed to have worked at CERN who claim that they created the Mandela effect.
Like the idea of it, or just
like they put it into people's heads. Here's the thing. This is the least supported one. There's no information.
Sure. I guess I'm still just confused, though. When they say they created the Mandela effect, do they mean they created the concept of it and allowed people to think of examples, or they're the ones saying they created false memories?
I believe they created the false memories.
Okay.
Yep. So there's no information backing these people's claims. So, I mean, this one I'm just telling you because it's interesting, but it's fake. It's got to be. These people claim that when the world was destroyed, we weren't sent to an alternate universe. We were uploaded into a simulation, like I said before. And that there are simulations within simulations within simulations. Essentially, it's a multiverse. But it's not organic. It's technology that's been created. The people making these claims, and this claim was mostly made, I believe it was 4chan or Reddit. So, again...
But simulation theory has taken off. Yes. There's like a documentary coming out about it. And like, I feel like a lot of it did originate with just trolls on the internet after the Matrix came out.
Right. I wouldn't take this as fact, but they bring up some interesting concepts because multiverses and simulations have been a part of human philosophy since the 200s CE. Yeah. I mean, we're talking Eastern philosophy. Alan Watts was a British philosopher. He was responsible for interpreting Buddhism and Taoism.
Taoism,
spelled with a T, but okay, Taoism, for Western minds in the 1940s. So he basically brought the concepts over and taught it to people in the West.
Right.
He described it as this, and I quote, "Imagine a multidimensional spider's web in the early morning covered in dewdrops. Mm-hmm. Every dewdrop contains the reflection of every other dewdrop. In each of those reflected dewdrops are the reflections of all the other dewdrops reflected from the other dewdrops. Mm-hmm. And those reflections in those and the other dewdrops have reflections in those, and so ad infinitum." Mm-hmm. That is the Buddhist conception of the universe. Yeah. Essentially. So this whole multi-dimensional multiverse simulations within simulations, it's not new at all. It's not new to 2012. It just so happens that it occurred on 2012.
Yeah. And we have new terminology for it, like simulations and stuff.
Right. So, okay. So if you don't believe anything I've talked about so far, even I mostly don't believe anything I've said so far. There's no multiverse, no simulations. The world's been perfectly fine this entire time. The Mandela effect is probably just some sort of weird cross-wiring in our brains or some sort of weird collective human consciousness thing. But the Mayans were not the only ones who predicted the end of a cycle in 2012. Did you know that? Mm-mm. A man named Terrance McKenna actually predicted a reality-arranging event that would occur in 2012. Okay, so full disclosure. This man is not a physicist. Okay. I think probably the best thing to call him would be
cult leader?
Philosopher.
Okay.
He wrote about a large variety of subjects. He wrote about language. He was really into psychedelics, shamanism, botany, theoretics. He wrote about human consciousness. He's got a bunch of books out there. His name is Terrance McKenna. He died in 2000 at the age of 53. But he read the I Ching. You heard of that? The ancient Chinese divination text written around 1000 BCE.
Okay. That sounds.
Does it sound familiar to you?
Yeah.
Everett studied a lot of Eastern philosophy in college.
Religion, yeah. Yeah, is it spelled IQIN?
It could be. This is spelled ICHING, but I assume it's because it's a translation from Chinese to...
Yeah. Anyway, yes.
Anyways, so he read the I Ching. Using concepts from this ancient text, he developed a theory that the nature of time isn't linear.
No.
It's based on fractal patterns.
Okay, and when you were describing the dewdrops on the spider web, that's what I was thinking of the entire time, is like fractals exist in pretty much every single form of matter in the universe. We're all built of building blocks and everything follows a pattern and it's not actually random. And I have these thoughts when I'm trying to fall asleep and I can't fall asleep.
That's why this made it on A Lil Spooky. Because even if you don't find any of this spooky, just contemplate the end of the world.
Or just contemplate the existence of fractals and how it's literally just code that we're all in.
Essentially, yes. So his concept is time is a fractal pattern. It's not constant, but it tends towards certain habits.
Yeah,
certain patterns. Yes, there's a pattern to it. So he worked out a mathematical waveform called the novelty time wave. Essentially, like there's the constant regular time, and then novel events happen, and things change. He superimposed actual dates from human history onto the graph that he created, and using population growth, pollution statistics, oil numbers. He determined
maybe it's like oil use or something like that.
He determined that the universe is going to end in 2012, and it's essentially going to be sparked by some anomalous event, some novelty event, like similar to the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima.
It's still very like Earth-centric thinking, though.
Yes.
Was he saying like it's going to be the end of the Earth or the end of the universe?
Based
on data of our own consumption.
Yes. And that's very interesting. That's a very interesting point. It is very Earth-centric. I mean, if we're talking a universe, and as we've discussed in the past, there's more than likely a life somewhere else in this infinite universe of ours.
There has to be.
Yes.
It would be near impossible if there wasn't.
Right. So, what about the novel events that have happened on their planets?
Right.
But essentially, there's an easier way to describe his theory. And I'm going to attribute this to Nick Hinton. Basically, the world started out very simply. And as time goes on, people and ideas and events get more and more and more complex.
Yeah.
Whatever that means.
I mean, that's just like how evolution works too, right? Like things get better, and then like I don't know. I guess we become more intelligent, so more complex things happen.
And I don't think that's true. I think that the world is equally as complex as it was 10,000 years ago. I just think
not that long ago, though.
Well, right. I'm talking about human history, I suppose.
Okay, sure.
I think that humans. It's not that we've gotten more intelligent, or maybe we have to a degree over like evolutionary time. But I think that relationships and events and disputes and everything were equally as complex, and mathematical ideas and everything, they just weren't the same. And that as time has gone on, we've added to them, improved them, but I don't necessarily think they're any more or less complex than they were originally.
With specific ideas and theories, yeah, I completely agree with you. I guess that things are just becoming more complex on the whole because of industry and discoveries of new technology.
Yes, yep, and but does that make it more complicated, or does that just adds?
Well, even the discovery of the Higgs boson particle, now things are super complicated.
That's a valid point. Well, the point is, this guy essentially, as events in time, everything gets more complex. The novel events get more major, I guess.
Sure.
And there would eventually reach a peak where there would be one novel event that essentially just ends the entire universe. And his prediction was November 2012.
And it doesn't really end. I imagine it's more of like a restart or like a decline rather than...
His was a cataclysmic event.
Interesting. Okay.
then he heard about the Mayan theory that it would end on December 21st, 2012, and he kind of like adopted that as well. He was like, oh,
before he died? Didn't he die in 2000, you said?
Yeah. Yeah.
So people were even discussing that before.
The Mayan? Yes. Yeah, that's been coming out.
I thought that was became kind of like a thing after 2000.
No,
because it was all Y2K before that.
Yeah, right. But the calendar round and the long count, I mean, that was discovered long before 2000.
Sure, I guess, yeah. I thought people just kind of put it off as like, it's just the end of their calendar, but maybe not.
Mm-mm.
When was that text you were talking about? When was that found? I don't know if you know that or not.
I feel like it was like the 50s or the 70s. Okay. It was before
2000.
2000.
Okay.
Take this guy's theory what you will. I mean, I'm also going to point out that he wrote quite a few books and was a huge fan of psychedelic mushrooms.
Oh, I think it's a Star Trek for some reason. I don't know
Likely Star Trek as well. If I was on mushrooms, I guess maybe that would make it extra fascinating. I don't know. Make of that theory what you will. But the reason I bring that up is for some reason there are multiple theories that the end of 2012 was the end of the universe.
Right.
Something about that year, arbitrarily, multiple people assumed that the world would end. But say that guy didn't convince you, which I assume he didn't. Have you, this is a completely, we got to do an episode about this because this is spooky, but have you ever heard of the time travel experiments at Montauk Airbase?
That sounds familiar.
I'm sure you've heard of them in passing.
Yeah.
If you listen to spooky podcasts.
Right.
And we'll have to do an episode about this. But it's been alleged that there were a series of government projects conducted at Montauk Air Base in New York. And they were meant to develop weapons for psychological warfare and research things like time travel, that sort of thing. It wouldn't surprise me if there was an air base at which they were conducting experiments of that kind.
Wait, so this is still like conspiracy? There's no proven existence of this like there was for MK Ultra? Because like that actually did happen.
Yeah,
sure.
I don't know that there's been actual, because they've released studies and stuff about MK Ultra.
They declassified documents.
Yes, so. Nothing about this, I believe, has been declassified. And please correct me if I'm wrong. If any of the listeners
did you say
know
what
this.
year this was in?
So I purposely didn't research much into it.
Okay, sure.
But just because Nick Hinton brought it up in his theories, I've got to cover it. So there's an airbase in New York meant to develop psychological warfare, weaponry, time travel, etc. Preston B. Nichols.
What a name.
I know, kind of cool. He was a whistleblower and he wrote books about these projects. He claimed that they were able to time travel, but they were not able to time travel past the year 2012.
Weird.
Because they couldn't find any future beyond it. Well, he describes it as there was a wall there. Like you get to 2012 and nothing. You can't move forward.
Maybe their algorithm was working off of the Mayan calendar and it just couldn't do it.
But you know what's interesting is he gave an interview about this in 2014, 2 years after the alleged potential end of the universe. So,
what does that mean?
Well, that could be another piece of evidence that we are in a different universe than we were previously.
That's true.
So if he had been in the previous universe, time traveling, they can't get past 2012. 2012 happens, boom, we get sucked into a black hole. Now we're in a different universe. He still exists, but, time keeps going.
But you said he was a whistleblower, so I assume he's just not involved with that project anymore if it existed. So he probably doesn't know if we can travel into a future year now. Like, can we travel to like 2040 now in 2021?
Right. I don't know. I don't know if the Montauk experiments are still happening. But point one for potential alternate universe.
Possible, yeah.
So the last theory I'm going to talk about is that this theory, again, I'm bringing it up because Nick Hinton did. I don't like this theory. It doesn't make sense to me, and it doesn't really matter. But
okay.
The last theory is not that the universe has ended, but that we've reached the end of history. meaning this isn't the end of the world or the universe, but it's more of a theory that humanity has reached the end of its socio-cultural evolution.
Like we've reached our peak?
Yes, like it's the stagnation of human progress.
Okay.
Basically...
I don't disagree with that, honestly.
Well, Western liberal democracy will become the final form of government in the universe. Events will still happen. People will still be living. Time will still go on. But democracy will just be more prevalent in the long term. So there's not going to be any giant wars, no giant life-changing discoveries, because what is the point of continual searching,
I guess as a society, that's what the argument is, because like there could be an asteroid that hits Earth or something, and that, changes everything.
Well, right. And again, this is another one of those completely Earth-centric, human-centric theories.
And Western-centric, too.
Very, yes. I mean, democracy hasn't been around that long. So, I mean, it's yet to be seen what the very long-term effects are.
It's been around since ancient Greece.
Yes, but I mean, if we're talking about the entirety of human existence...
Yeah.
I mean, it's still fairly new. The evidence these people use is that countries with mature democracies rarely go to war with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess like if every country is a mature democracy, what use would they have in going to war with each? I don't know. I don't like this theory.
Well, and I was just going to say though that this is the macro way of thinking with this theory. I guess when you first started describing this, I was thinking on more of a micro level, and I'm very pessimistic when it comes to like social media and stuff. And I feel like we have so much information available to us through social media that we're getting like dumber because we don't want to seek out certain stuff.
Yeah.
And we're just we consume what's given to us based on what these companies are giving us.
Right.
Same with news and everything. They're kind of following their own agenda. So I don't know. It feels like we kind of are plateauing when it comes to like educated, intelligent discussion.
Yeah. I mean, people are still going to be motivated to build new things, to think of new things, to discover why the world is the way that it is.
I mean, we're trying to go to Mars.
Exactly. So this to me is definitely not a point in favor of the world ending in 2012.
No,
because
it's just an interesting point. Yes. Is what I mean. Like maybe it's more of like a warning, right? Like we need to like.
Right. Essentially, I mean, all I'm getting is, people are going to get more complacent. The world will get more boring. I mean, I guess there won't be any more ethnic clashes or religious fundamentalism. I don't know, but I don't necessarily think that means the end of human progress unless you consider conflict to be a stimulator of progress. Which I mean,
look at what was happening in 2020.
Well, yes, no, it is, but I don't think it's the only thing that sparks progress.
No, of course not.
So I don't like that, Nick Hinton. Not into that theory, but all your other stuff, good shit. The final point that he makes is that if you think fourth dimensionally.
Ooh. Before you even talk about this, I honestly was thinking earlier in this episode, I want my next episode to be about the fourth dimension.
Okay, well, this is like a wrap-up sentence. I'm not really getting anything interesting. But if you think fourth dimensionally, the world's already ended. Like, you could say that the moment the universe began, its ending was predestined.
Predetermined.
Yes, its ending was set in stone. Or maybe we're in a constant cycle of big bangs and big crunches.
I wanted to say that earlier too before we moved on. Like that is one of the more common theories now in a lot of like astronomy is
right.
Yeah, like the Big Bang eventually it's going to reach a point where it can't sustain itself by continuing to expand, so then it contracts.
Right.
And then we just start all over again.
And maybe it contracts because of the Higgs boson particle.
I mean, that would be
or the Higgs field.
For it. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So maybe we're just in this endless cycle, and maybe it's already happened. Maybe at the beginning of the universe.
It definitely hasn't happened, though. At least with that specific theory, with the contracting and expanding, because and I won't get too much into detail because it's super boring, but there's something called background radiation. So there's like a certain measurement that is kind of proof of the Big Bang happening.
Sure.
So if we were contracting, those measurements would change. So we're still expanding.
Oh, okay.
But,
well, I mean, maybe the universe began the moment you were born and it ends the moment you die because you are actually non-existent and you're a simulation. Or the universe is a creation of your own imagination. And you're a completely meaningless speck of nothing in an infinite universe that will likely end in the future. And people will forget you. And that's a
life,
little
baby.
Spooky.
That's life, baby.
That's life. Anyways, it was more sciencey.
A little more sciencey, but it's...
Than spooky. But if you lay down tonight and think about your place in the universe, I guarantee you'll go through an existential crisis.
Yeah, it's existential dread versus just like a cryptid type spooky.
Yes. So first thoughts. I already can tell you don't believe the world ended in 2012. But what do you think of these theories?
I think there is a lot of merit to most of these theories, even if like you just take them with a grain of salt and kind of think like that's an interesting, maybe there's like a half truth to it.
So one thing after I read, before I started doing research, and again, I apologize, my research wasn't like super in-depth.
It's a lot to talk about.
It's a lot to talk about. It would get really boring. I have limited brain capacity to store all of these facts. I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of things I got wrong. But any theoretical physicists out there, please feel free to offer your thoughts. The point is, I read a bunch of different comments afterwards, right? Where people were like, this blew my mind, man.
Sure.
But the number one majority sentiment was like, you know what, you're right. The world has felt different since then. And that to me is dumb. Because I feel like, the world has definitely been different since 9/11. I definitely feel like the world has changed since 9/11. And definitely for sure, the world has changed since February 2020.
I think 2001 was a definite more of
cultural
a major turning
shift.
point than 2012 was.
Yes. So what was I doing in 2012? My life feels as though it has continued on a logical path since 2012. That's my life, but
okay. So my whole takeaway from this whole thing is the whole point of this theory and the theories surrounding it kind of centered around the Higgs boson particle.
Yes, and that's the most believable part.
Yeah, and I think there definitely is a little bit of like fear involved with that. And you haven't heard anything in the news about that since then, really, other than Stephen Hawking. Of course, he's passed, rest in peace. But ever since his quote about the God particle and whatever it was, 2014, there hasn't really been any other talk about it. Mm-hmm. So I feel like
there's also been a lot of shit happening in the world that's been distracting. True,
and I'm sure it's extremely expensive to kind of do research with this thing that we can
barely
control.
And I imagine dangerous.
Yes. So that was my point, too. It's like, I wonder if he kind of convinced CERN and other scientists across the world, like, we shouldn't even be touching this. Like, this may be disastrous. And I think that's a little bit more scary than, like, existential dread with the fourth dimension. And
it's that there's like a universal atomic bomb at our fingertips that could explode at any second.
I guess my point is, like, if something did happen with the Higgs boson particle, we probably would have realized it happened because we probably all would have died if we were sucked into a black hole.
Well, we probably wouldn't have realized it happened because we would not exist and this podcast wouldn't exist. And
that's my point. Right. Yeah. Like, we would have noticed if it happened because we wouldn't be here today.
Well, that's the whole point of the alternate universe. Just think about your place in the universe, people. So does it really matter if I eat that entire sheet cake by myself? No.
No, it doesn't. It's probably not even real.
All right. So that's enough about that. Yeah. The world, we're living in an alternate dimension. Do you have any?
Well, but the thing is, we're still living, so live the best you can. Like,
eat that whole sheet cake.
Just do your best.
Try your hardest.
Just do it. Okay, so I do have a very short story that I wanted to share with everyone because I thought it was so odd and so bizarre. Very short story. So, in Edinburgh, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly.
Edinburgh, Scotland.
Yeah, in Scotland, the capital of Scotland. There was this lady. I'm not going to even get too specific with the story because it's not that long. So there's this lady that lost her cat, and she was putting up these lost pet posters across town. And I don't think the amount of time was specified, but she went back to maybe she was collecting the posters, or maybe she was just in the same area or something. But someone had written on one of the posters an extremely creepy message.
Okay.
I am fine. I have chosen to live with Roxanne. No red light.
Wait, red light?
Yeah, the song. Roxanne. You don't have to turn on the red light. However it goes. But the point is, what the hell does it mean?
Somebody took her cat and doesn't want to give it back.
Yeah, but what does that clue mean?
The Roxanne?
No red light.
That sounds like something I would write because I just felt compelled to finish the song lyric.
Maybe, but I don't know. The cat's living with Roxanne now. No red light. It's a message.
I don't think it's a message. I think it's like how when I'm like, hey, wake me up before you leave. I always have to say, wake me up before you go.
I don't know, man. I thought it was interesting.
Maybe you are a conspiracy theorist.
What if we lost our dog? We have a dog too.
I wouldn't live
in
for
addition
it.
to the cats that destroyed our whatever last episode. If we lost her and we put up signs saying, "Oh, lost dog, let us know, call us if you find her," and then someone wrote a message her name's Biscuit, if you care. And someone wrote, I have Biscuit now. She's eating tea and biscuits with us now, or something like that. Does that mean
they're feeding her parts of her own body?
Right, yeah.
You mean like how my mom gives her pet chickens eggs sometimes?
You just called out your mom.
Yeah,
I think
sorry,
she listens.
I'm just not getting the vibe. It just sounds like somebody stole this lady's cat.
Well, no, that definitely happened. Or at least that's the implication. But I'm just confused by the message that was left.
First off, if Biscuit got lost, you would put up posters, and an hour later I would take them down. Because this is...
All right. Well, that's enough of that. So if you would like to share a story with us and have us read it on the podcast, send it to us.
Yes.
You can send it to our email or our social medias. Our social media are... I don't know what I'm even saying anymore. I'm so distraught.
It's NerdSloth HQ on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. If you want to email us, you can email us at contact@nerdsloth.com. You can visit our website, www.nerdsloth.com. Check out all of our other podcasts with the rest of the crew.
My brain is frazzled, from all this thinking of, existential dread. And you did the research on it, too. I was just, in my own head thinking,
yeah, and I didn't even explain it very well, but if you sit down and you think about it by yourself.
Well, that's what I was doing while you were telling me the story. So I'm
So you weren't listening?
No, I was. That's what I mean. I was listening and also having a thought I don't even exist. I'm going to bed.
Me too.
All right. I love y'all.
Love you all. Feel free to let us know what you thought about this episode.
And send us your tales, your messages, or anything you want at the things we told you already.
We already talked about them. All right. Bedtime.
Bye.
Love you. Bye.
Presented by NerdSloth,
a place for lazy nerds.
If you like what you heard, consider donating at patreon.com/nerdsloth so we can continue bringing you quality shows. Be sure to also leave us a review and share your favorite episodes and clips on social media. If you're looking for more content, visit us at nerdsloth.com.